Hi everyone, my name is Christian, Vancouver Realtor, and the topic for today's video is staying out of Airbnb jail, staying out of short-term rental jail. And the reason I want to make this video is just to help you understand the rules and the bylaws that your city has regarding short-term rentals, because to a lot of people it can be very confusing to a lot of homeowners. And if you're a new homeowner and you need the extra income because mortgage rates have been rising so fast, I'd love to help you know how to do that, or at least understand how to stay on the right side of the bylaw. So that's the purpose of this video. And if you are wondering why now, the reason now is I'm working with a young professional couple, and they're upsizing from a two-bedroom condo into a detached house. Now that's a big jump. I mean, you're going from an $900,000 condo to a $1.6 million detached house in a place like Coquitlam. So that's a sizable mortgage. You can be looking at mortgage payments right now of $5,000 to $6,000 a month, if not more. So you want to be able to make some income. And if your house checks off all the criteria, you may be able to do that. But for a lot of homeowners, understanding the rules, it's like a ship going through fog. It's really hard to be clear. Now, one way to stay out of Airbnb jail, of course, is to make sure that your guests are quiet, respectful, and don't park their cars in front of your neighbor's place, which tends to really tick off the neighbors. These three cities, Surrey, and to a lesser extent, Burnaby and Coquitlam, are complaint-driven, meaning if your neighbor calls the city up and complains about those behaviors, that's when you might get a surprise knock on the door and an inspection. Otherwise, those cities, at least their staff suggested, are not inclined to come out and inspect your home. So I went on to these following city websites because my client was looking at a home in these 5 areas. And then I called all 5 municipalities just to clarify wherever I was somewhat confused. There was a definition that I wanted precisely answered. And those 5 cities for this video will be Vancouver, Burnaby, New Westminster, Coquitlam, and the city of Surrey. So that I'm going to talk to you about all of those 5. Now, some of these cities, the rules are very black and white, crystal clear, easy to understand. In other municipalities, it's hard to get somebody on the phone, let alone get an answer as to what's allowed, what you can do with your house to comply with a short-term rental. So let's go ahead and let's jump into that now. Okay, so let's start with my favorite city, and that's the city of Coquitlam, because it's so easy to understand. I think you could be an 8-year-old and figure this one out. And their site, on the city site, literally 4 or 5 bullet points. Bang, 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 bang. Done. Anybody could understand it. So in Coquitlam, if you are going to do a short-term rental to comply, it has to be your principal residence. That's a common theme with all the cities. You cannot be renting out more than 40% of the space towards short-term rental. The fee for a business license is $87, so that's not much. The city will send out an inspector. However, there's no surprise inspections. They will call you. And when I called them on the phone just to double check about this, they said, yeah, nothing to worry about. We're going to let you know the inspector's coming out. Key thing here, in Coquitlam, you can only have 1 kitchen in the house, okay? So your Airbnb guests, your short-term guests, would be using the same kitchen if they're going to use one. And you cannot have a lock that separates the upstairs from the downstairs, if the downstairs is what you are renting out. So that you have to take that lock off. And you don't need to legalize the suite, which is also just a real bonus because it makes life so much easier on you, dear homeowner, in the city of Coquitlam. So if you've bought a house there, if you want to do short-term rental, pretty straightforward. And if you've got questions, you'd call the city there. All right, the city of Surrey. Now, they are less comfortable with short term rentals. They're not even comfortable talking about it. When I call the city staff and I use the word Airbnb, they wouldn't even use that. It's like using the F word with them. So now, on their website, they call it bed and breakfast, which suggests that you're going to be making a breakfast, which I believe is highly unlikely. Nevertheless, that's what they call it. And for them, it has to be your principal residence. The city staff stressed that there cannot be a second cooking facility and that you are not allowed to have a stove, a refrigerator. You're not even allowed to have the electrical panel. They said if the inspector, when they come to do the inspection, they will ask you to take out the electrical panel. So seemed quite strict on that. The business license there is $129. And of course, it has to be your principal residence, if I didn't already mention that. You're allowed to rent up to 3 rooms to 2 people each, so six guests in total. The city of Vancouver is the hardest to get answers from. You can go on their website. They have this short little mini checklist of yes/no questions, which sounds straightforward enough, except when you have further questions as to, let's say, what is a legal dwelling unit, and you want a definition for that, it's going to be very hard to get it because they do not put a phone number on their website. So you need to email them, and hopefully you'll get a response in 1 week. The reason they don't put a phone number on their website, I presume, is they don't want you, dear taxpayer, to call them, which is kind of like a nice way of giving you a middle finger. But anyway, it has to be your principal residence. It cannot be a locked off unit, a separate unit with kitchen and separate entry, right? So in other words, in Vancouver, it's easiest to rent out just rooms in your house. Okay, if you're looking for a definition as to what is a legal dwelling unit, I found it hard to get the answers. The city staff didn't really have them either. Of course, there should be no separate kitchen for your short-term rental, and they will send out an inspector. Now, a legal dwelling unit here has to comply with building codes and safety codes, and my understanding is that's interconnected fire alarms and fire separation. Fire separation could mean things like type X gypsum board, and that's where it gets a little too technical for me. So I would leave that to you to call or to email the city of Vancouver to see exactly whether or not you qualify. I think it also depends on who you talk to there. I talked to one person who had really no idea. I got off the phone. I was more confused. Another person just seemed to be a little bit more easygoing about it. So the city hands out $1,000 fines if you're doing this without a license. So make sure you do, because Airbnb works with the different cities. And to register, it's only $56. So that's straightforward. $49 to re-register every year. I would definitely call the city ahead of time. If you are in the process of buying the home because you want to Airbnb it, you would definitely want to call ahead of time, just because I wouldn't want you to get a home and then find out afterwards it doesn't comply with the rules, because you have to have fire resistant walls and doors, which may be quite expensive. So please look into it. All right, Burnaby. Now, when it comes to Burnaby, they're going to be updating their short-term rental regulations in late July, in August this year. So check back then to see what they are. As of the time of making this video, here's what we have for Burnaby. You're allowed to short-term rent rooms or part of your house, of course, if it's your principal residence, and the guests are using the same cooking facilities, they're using the same bathrooms that you use. And you can only short-term rent for 90 nights per year. Now, if, let's say, you and your family want to take a vacation to Europe and you don't want to leave the home empty, you wanted to put it on Airbnb for 28 days, you can do that, because that's the maximum. You're allowed 28 days when you're not there to do a short-term rental. You can have up to 4 unrelated people or 6 related people. And the business license in Burnaby is $250. So again, check back in later this summer to see what the updated rules are, because the staff says they're working on it and they're going to release that to the public soon. And New Westminster, like all the others, it has to be your principal residence, and you cannot be renting out short term a secondary suite, for example. That has to be kept for the rental pool. It has to be in the right zoning area. That's similar to Surrey as well. And similar to Surrey, they call it bed and breakfast, which implies that, again, you're serving a breakfast, which I don't think a lot of Airbnbs are doing. So you really have to be clear about what that entails. There's a guy named Alex in the New West City department who's really good to talk to. I did the research for this video about 3 weeks ago, so I don't recall whether or not I spoke to him. In essence, though, not too different from most of the other municipalities. In New West, you're to comply with the short-term rental bylaws. You do have to pass a number of fire and safety protocols, and some of those include you have to show that you have fire extinguishers stored on site. You have to have a point of egress, like an exit to leave your home. I'm not sure if they're saying you have to have an actual sign that says exit. And there may be other fire protocols as well that you want to just double check with the city of New West. So I do think that when you look at all the cities, there's a common theme here. They want to keep as many as, well, pretty much all the secondary suites in the rental pool for long-term renters, because there's a lack of long-term rental units. And if everybody turns their home into a hotel, that's great for the homeowners, that's great for you and me, but it sucks for the renters, right? Because now they've got nowhere to live, and their rents get jacked up for them. And we do need service personnel in the city. We need people working in the coffee shops. We need people working in other service sector jobs like retail, which tend to not pay as much. And so I would just say to you that whatever you're planning to do, call the city. And if you're making an offer on the place and you're thinking of doing short-term rental, I would call the city in advance, or at the very least, do it during that subject removal period. I call that the due diligence period. That's when you pick up the phone, you call them, find out what you can do and what you can't do. Because God forbid you move in and then you find out your home is outside the zoning that allows for short-term rental, which is the case with Surrey. So you want to be very clear on what's allowed. So I hope that video helps. I do think that if you're someone out there, you want to Airbnb, I do feel a lot of sympathy for you. I know your hands are kind of tied with all these restrictions. I understand the mortgage rates are going up, and you definitely want to make a little bit of extra money wherever you can. So if you're the courageous, enterprising type, it's a great way to make that extra money. And I really hope there's a way that you can find to make that happen for you. So thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. I'm okay with that too. And if you've been Airbnb, whatever your experiences have been, please do share that in the comments section. I'd love to read about it, and I'm sure others would too. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.